Hello everyone, welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah shiur. We are holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Chanukah. And Emir Hashem, in this shiur we will be learning Daf Kuf Mem Beis Amid Beis. Very interesting topic today. We're going to be discussing the question of the Shamash, the extra nair that we have on the Chanukah menorah. And we all know really what that nair is there for. That nair is there because we learned in the previous shiur, we learned on Kuf Mem Beis Amid Aleph earlier, we're in Taf Reish Ayin Gimel Sif Aleph. So at the end of the previous shiur, we learned about the Isser, the prohibition, that you are not allowed to derive any benefit from the nairis of the Chanukah. You're not allowed to read by the nairis of the Chanukah. You're not allowed to count money by the nairis of the Chanukah. We said that even according to the first opinion, you're not allowed to do a tashmish shel kedusha. You're not allowed to learn Torah by the nairis of the Chanukah. There was a yesh mi shematir that said that you could do a tashmish shel kedusha. You could learn Torah, let's say b'derech arai. You want to look up a quick Rashi, you could look up a quick Rashi. But we saw that there is this isser that you're not allowed to make use of the nairis of Chanukah, and we gave several different reasons. The most basic reason is because we need it to be obvious that these neiros are there for the neiros shal mitzvah. If you're going to be using those neiros lehishtamesh la'ora, if you're going to be reading or learning by the neiros, by the Chanukah neiros, then there is no heker. There is no recognition that those neiros are actually there to be neiros shal mitzvah. Especially if you, from the perspective of days gone by, where you didn't have electric lighting in the home, so it was very common to have neiros around the home. How is anybody to know that these neiros that you have out are neiros shal mitzvah, that they're neiros shal Chanukah? So these neiros have to be reserved, that you do not use them for their light. And by doing so, we now know that they're neiros shal mitzvah. We also saw that we compare them to the neiros of the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, just like the neiros of the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash were not used for light, so too the neiros of the Chanukah menorah are not used for light. We also saw there's an inyan of bizui mitzvah. We don't want to treat the mitzvah in a disrespectful way. If you have a choshev, a nair, that's choshev because it's a nair shal mitzvah, you don't go ahead and count money by it. That would be an inyan of bizui mitzvah. So we had these various different reasons why there's an isser to be mishtamish la'ora, but the bottom line is, whatever the reason is, you're not allowed to be mishtamish la'ora. Now, says the Mechaber at the top of Kuf Mem Beis Amid Beis, V'noyagim lahadlik ner noisaf. The minig is to light an additional ner. Now we'll have to see what this means, an additional ner. It's additional, it's added on top of what exactly? We'll have to see what this means. But in any case, the Mechaber says, the noyagim, the minig is lahadlik ner noisaf, to light an additional ner, kidei she'im yishtamesh la'ora, so that if you do make use of the light that's coming from the menorah, yeh la'or hanoisaf, you'll be using the light of the additional candle, shahu oisai shahudlak achroin, which is the last light that you're going to light. Boy, there's a real mouthful over here. So we have to start to pull this apart a little bit. So let's start from Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Yodalid. And I'm actually going to take you, I think, through the words of the Torah and the Darkei Moshe, the Ramah on the Torah, to gain a better understanding of what's going on this very short but very complex page. So let's pull this apart from the beginning. The first phrase that the Mechaber said was, V'nayhagiv lahadlik ner noisav. The minig is that we add an additional ner. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah in Ois Katan Yodalid, V'nayhagiv lahadlik ner noisav, we have the minig to add an additional ner. Pirush, what that means, an additional ner, Milevad haner shemanichin al hashulchan. Again, we're talking from the perspective of days gone by where you did not have electric lights. When you didn't have electric lights, you had neiros on the shulchan. You had neiros on the table. If you were going to sit down by the table and eat, or you were going to sit down by the table and learn, you needed light. So you had a candelabra, you had some kind of neros on the shulchan. So says the Mishnah Berurah, when the Mechaber says that we're noyeg on Chanukah to light an additional ner, what does he mean an additional ner? He means in addition to the neros that you have on your shulchan that are there to give you light to use in the house. So you already have lights out on the shulchan to create light that you could use. But that's not enough, says the Mechaber. On Chanukah, we add another ner. We add an extra ner. Pirish. Milavada ner shemanichan ala shulchan. Besides the ners that you already have on the shulchan to give ambient light that you could function by, we add another one, an extra one on Chanukah. Why? Because we're concerned, kevan shemadlikin bifnim, since we're lighting Chanukah neris inside, we're talking about already during the days when they were not lighting outside by the door, they're lighting inside, we're concerned, ulai yishtamshu b'neris shel Chanukah v'lav adatayu. We're concerned, you're lighting Chanukah neris, you might come use the Chanukah neris. So in order to make sure that you're not going to use the Chanukah neris, we light another ner. And we put this ner, now again, we put an additional ner, besides we already have neris that are creating ambient light. But since we're lighting Chanukah neris, and since there's a prohibition, there's an isser that you're not allowed to use the light of the Chanukah menorah, so we want you to light another light for ambient light that's going to be located somewhere near, and we'll see where that location is according to the Mechaber, but somewhere near the Chanukah menorah, you have to have another light for ambient light, because you might come to the menorah without realizing. You know, you want to look up something in a sefer, you might come near the menorah and look in your sefer, and therefore we want you to have another light over there, the way the Mechaber said it, kedei she'im yishtamish la'ora, so that if you approach the menorah and you use the light generated by the menorah, yeh la'or hanoisif, you won't actually be using the light of the menorah, you'll be using the light of this additional light. And again, the words of the Mishnah Berurah in Eis Katan Yadalid, Pirish milavada ner shemanichan al shulchan, besides the regular neris that you already have for ambient light, you have to add another one near the menorah, to chayshishin, because we're concerned, kevin shamadlika biftim, since you're lighting inside, ulai yishtamshu b'neris shel Chanukah v'lav adatayu, you might come inadvertently to use the light generated by the menorah without realizing it. So now that you have another light lit nearby, we'll say that you're using that light. Aval, but points out the Mishnah Berurah, me'ikar adin, this is only because of a chashash. Me'ikar adin, this is not necessary. Why? Aval me'ikar adin, kevin sheyesh lo ner al shulchanai, since you already do have a light on the table for ambient light, ain't tzarech lahadlik ner noisef. Me'ikar adin, you don't really need this light. Picture our scenario. You're lighting by the window in your dining room that's facing the Rosh Hashanah. You have a chandelier in the dining room. You have spotlights on the ceiling. So is there any problem that you're going to be mishtamish by the aura of the menorah? Not really. You have a ton of ambient light. You have ambient light all over the place. So me'ikar adin, do you need a shamash? Me'ikar adin, do you need another light to make sure that the hana that you're getting is from that light and not from the menorah's light? No, you have a ton of ambient light in the house with all the lighting fixtures that you have. But there is a concern. Lamaisa, you have a menorah, and if it's the sixth night of Chanukah, you have 6 lichtalach burning on the menorah, and 6 lichtalach could generate a half decent amount of light, and you might be reading something, and you might walk by the menorah, and you might inadvertently read the paper that you're holding in your hand by the light of the menorah, which is a no-no, because you can't derive benefit from the lights of the menorah. But now, since there's a shamash there, all right, so you're getting the hana from the shamash, you're not getting the light from the other neiros. So it's because of a chash, it's because of a concern, but it's zikr not me'ikar adin. Okay, so that covers ois katan yud dalet. Now let's go to Tezvav, where so the Mechaber said, what's the purpose of this light? She'im yishtamesh. In case inadvertently you approach the menorah to go use the light of the menorah, so there's a shamash over there. And what does it help really? I mean, there's six. Let's say it's the sixth night. There's 6 Chanukah licht that you're not allowed to use the benefit of. There's only one shamash. But we're going to say that you're reading the paper by the one shamash, not by the 6 lichtalach. But the point really is that since you have a shamash, so no one is going to say that, oh, you lit those lichtalach, so you should be able to read the paper. No, there's a hecker. The hecker is the 6 lichtalach on Neres Chanukah. The shamash, that's the one that if you're reading a paper, you're reading it by the shamash. You're not reading it by those. Everybody understands that you understand that you're not allowed to derive benefit from the 6 lichtalach of Chanukah, but there's a shamash. So if you're reading for a second by the menorah, you're reading by the shamash, not by the 6 lichtalach. Says the Mishnah Berurah Tezvav, she'im yishtamish. The phraseology of the Mechaber is, if you'll come inadvertently to use the light of the menorah, everybody will understand and will say that you're using the light of the shamash, not the light of the menorah. Says the Mechaber, v'ayin Magen Avram, take a look at the Magen Avram. Don't misunderstand the Mechaber, says the Magen Avram. Shalichatchila ein lehishtamish eitzel kulan yachad. Don't think that what the Mechaber is saying is, once you have a shamash by the menorah, now you could go read the paper by the light of the menorah, because that's what, right. Maybe the Mechaber says that we add a ner noisef so that now you could use the light of the menorah because you have a shamash. No, that's not what the Mechaber is saying. The Mechaber is saying it's a b'diavad. We have a shamash so that in case you inadvertently come to use the light of the menorah, we'll peg your use to the shamash, not to the lichtalach of Chanukah. But it's only a b'diavad. It's not that once you have a shamash, now lechatchila you can use the light of the menorah. No, there's an isser to use the light of the menorah, and that isser b'mkayim medes. That isser remains. So again, says the Mishnah Berurah inside as Katan Tezvav, v'ayin Magen Avram. The Magen Avram says, shalachatchila ein lehistamish eitzel kulan yachad. Don't think that now lechatchila you could go over to the menorah and you could use the light of the menorah because you have a shamash. Kiyim la'ara noisef ayla shamash bilvad. If the shamash is decently away from the menorah and you want to use the light of the shamash by itself, that you could do. Because if you'll go use the light of the menorah together with the shamash, if you'll take your paper and you'll go over to the menorah with the 6 lichtalach and the shamash, and you'll sit there reading the paper about the light of the menorah, then haraya yoimar, somebody who sees you doing this will say, litzarchai hidlik kulan. Obviously, these are not Chanukah licht. Obviously, this guy lit a candelabra so he could read his paper. That's what he's doing. Why are there 7 licht? Why not? Sometimes when somebody needs light, he uses a lot of neiros. V'ayin bir halacha. So again, what did this Mishnah Berurah tell me? This Mishnah Berurah says, what does the Mechaber tell you? The Mechaber says, A, you're not allowed to be mishtamish to the Or HaMenorah. B, since you're not allowed to be mishtamish to the Or HaMenorah, the minig is that even though you have ambient light in the house, you should have a shamash nearby the menorah. Why? So that if inadvertently you go over to the menorah and you use the light of the menorah, it'll be clear that you're using the light of the shamash, not the light of the Chanukah lichtalach. And the Chanukah lichtalach are Chanukah lichtalach. They're neiros shel mitzvah. Because if there wouldn't be a shamash and you would go use the neiros of the menorah, so first of all, you're not allowed to do that. Second of all, somebody might say, oh, obviously those are not Chanukah lichtalach. Obviously, he lit those litzarchai. Now, the Magen Avram says, you might have made a mistake from this Mechaber. You might take away from this Mechaber, there's an Isser, you're not allowed to be mishtamish to the R of the menorah. Now we have a loophole, we have a way to get around it. The way to get around it is light a Shamash by the menorah. Once you light a Shamash by the menorah, the Isser goes away, because now we'll just say that if you're reading by the menorah, you're not using the Chanukah licht, you're using the Shamash. Says the Magen Avraham, no. It's only the Shamash is only a b'di'evet. The Shamash is, in case you inadvertently come to read by the menorah, to use the light of the menorah, we'll say that you were using the Shamash. But it's not l'chavkila. It's not, oh, now go ahead and now it's mutter to use the light of the menorah. No, that's not what the Mechaber meant. Okay. Now, where should you put this extra ner? Let's remember, the Mechaber did not use the word Shamash. We call it a Shamash, and we'll see that that's significant. The Mechaber did not use the word Shamash. The Mechaber said an or noisif, an additional ner. Where do you put this additional ner? Says the Mechaber, second line down, middle of the line, v'yanichenu merachai ktsas b'shar neris mitzvah. You should position it a little bit away from the other lichtalach, a little bit away from the neris shel mitzvah. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut tezayin v'yanichenu merachai. Why? Kidei sheyeh heker kamen neris madlikin b'isayim v'lo yakshavu imahem. I mean, let's remember, we're doing Mahadrin and a Mahadrin. So the sixth night of Chanukah, we light 6 lichtalach. Now, if the Mechaber says you should add a ner noisaf, so that means that on the 6th night of Chanukah, you're lighting 7 ners. Now, if on the 6th night of Chanukah, you're lighting 7 ners, how does anybody know that it's the 6th night of Chanukah? It looks like it's the 7th night of Chanukah. Answer is, the ar noisaf goes a little bit away from the menorah. You don't light the extra ner together with all of the other ners. You position it a little bit away. So now we have a heker, it's the 6th night of Chanukah, and we also have this ner noisaf that serves as the ner that takes care of this issue of the isser to be mishtamish la'ora in case inadvertently you come to be mishtamish la'ora. Okay. So, again, did the Mechaber use the word shamash? No, the Mechaber never used the word shamash. So, when you see this Mechaber, what you come away with is like this. The Mechaber is telling you, the Iker mitzvah of Ner Chanukah is Ner Yishu Beisai. One person lights 1 ner. Mahadrin, every member of the household lights 1 ner every night. Mahadrin min Mahadrin, every member of the household lights a new light, an additional light every night of Chanukah. So the 6th night of Chanukah, everybody lights 6 ners. That's the mitzvah of Chanukah. Comes along the Mechaber. Mechaber says, issue. We have a problem. The problem is that it's also lehishtamish la'ora. You're not allowed to use the light of the menorah. That creates a problem because even though you have ambient light in the house, wherever the menorah is located, the menorah is generating light, and you might come inadvertently to use that light. What's the eitzah? The eitzah is, on the 6th night of Chanukah, you're not going to light 6 neres, you're going to light 7 neres. What do you gain by lighting 7 neres? Because now you have 6 neres that are neres shel mitzvah, and you have 1 ner that's not a ner shel mitzvah. And since you have that 1 ner that's not a ner shel mitzvah, if you come to inadvertently derive benefit from the menorah, you'll be deriving the benefit from the 1 ner that's not the ner shel mitzvah. You won't be deriving the benefit from the 6 neres that are the ner shel mitzvah. Now you're subverting the whole mitzvah of Mahadrin and Mahadrin, because now on the 6th night of Chanukah, you're lighting 7 neres, not 6. The eitzah is, position it a little bit away, and now everybody will understand that it's the 6th night of Chanukah, and there's a ner noisef. Okay, another key phrase that the Mechaber said over here was, the Mechaber said, Shehu oisai shehut lak achroin. The ner noisef, which ner is it? On the 6th night of Chanukah, you tell me you're going to light 7 neres. Which one is the ner noisef? When should you light the ner noisef? Says the Mechaber, the ner noisef is the last one. So it's the 6th night of Chanukah. You're going to light not 6, you're going to light 7. So you're going to light 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now you're going to light number 7. You're going to position number 7 a little bit away. And that last one that you light, that's the ner noisef. That's not a ner shel mitzvah. Why does it have to be the achron? Why not the Rishon? Why not the middle one? So the answer to that is to be found in the Torah. The answer is because when are you going to light it? You're making a bracha. You're making two brachas. And we know you can't be mafsik between the bracha and the mitzvah. So the ner noisef can't be the first ner because the ner noisef is not a ner shal mitzvah. So if you make the bracha and then you light the ner noisef and then you light the ner shal mitzvah, you would just mafsik between the bracha and the mitzvah. So it certainly can't be the first ner. And not only that, it also says that it shouldn't be any one of the middle ners, because in the words of the Torah, in the language of the Torah says, Neirus Chanukah ein lahafsik bohen. You shouldn't be mafsik in the Neir shel mitzvah at all. So not only do we not want you to be mafsik between the bracha and the lighting of the first ner, which maybe is the Iker Ner. Once you light one Ner, you were already Mekayim the Iker Mitzvah of Chanukah, Ner Yishu Beisai. So if it's the sixth night of Chanukah, once you light the first Ner, you're Mekayim the Mitzvah. Right? That's why we said you can't be mafsik. You're saying Haneres Halalu, you can't be mafsik between the bracha and the lighting of the first ner, because the first ner is the Iker Mitzvah. Once you light the first ner, now you could already start saying Haneres Halalu, because the other ones are only Hider Mitzvah. But what we don't want you to do is to light a ner that's not a ner shel mitzvah until you finish lighting all the neres. So don't light the first ner, then say the next ner that I'm lighting is the ner noisaf, and then light additional ners. No, when should you light the ner noisaf? The ner noisaf should be the last ner. Okay, now it's very important to get this straight, because what comes out so far, according to this Mechaber, is that what you're going to do is like this. When you come to light your Chanukah ners, you're going to make two brachas, and then if it's the sixth night of Chanukah, you're going to light 7 ners. First you're going to light 6, and then you're going to light a 7th that is positioned a little bit away. Okay, so says the Mechaber. Now, I pointed out to you that the phraseology of the Mechaber is, v'noyagim lahadlik ner noisaf. The minig is to light an additional ner. And I said, we have to define, what does that mean, additional? Additional means it's added on top of something else. And we had a very interesting Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah Nice Cut Yodalit said, what does it mean it's additional? It doesn't mean in addition to the Neres Chanukah. So again, if it's the way you would have been tempted to learn this Mechaber, very simple, is that ner noisaf, an additional ner, means that if it's the sixth night of Chanukah, you don't light 6 neres, you add an additional one. You add a 7th. You have 6, which are the ner shel mitzvah, and an additional one for this problem of the Isser l'shtamish la'ora. But the Mishnah Berurah said that's not what it means. The Mishnah Berurah said that the ner noisaf, the additional ner, means what? It means in addition to the ambient light in the house. That's what ner noisaf means. Like this, me'ikar adin, this whole problem is not a problem, because you have ambient light in the house. You have your chandelier, you have your spotlights. In days gone by, you have your candelabra on the table that's meant for ambient light. So this whole problem is not a problem. So ner noisaf means we're noyeg to light an additional ner in addition to the ners that we have for ambient lighting, and therefore, Meikar Adin, we don't have this problem, but still we add another ner nearby to the menorah to take away this problem in case you approach the menorah to use light from the menorah. Now, that's very odd. Why did the Mishnah Berurah see fit to torture the Mechaber that way? I mean, a simple reading would just be ner noisef, an additional ner. The sixth night of Chanukah, you light 6 neres. The minig is to light an additional one, to light a 7th one. On the 7th night of Chanukah, you light 7 neres. The minig is an additional one, you have an 8th one. On the 8th night of Chanukah, you light 8 ner shel mitzvah. The minig is an additional one, you have a 9th one. That would have been a simple way to learn the Mechaber. Why did the Chavetz Chaim see fit to torture the Mechaber this way? The answer is in Sha'ar Tzionos Katan Yud Gimel that he brought this down from the Pri Chadash. And the Pri Chadash is very clear. I looked up the Pri Chadash. The Pri Chadash is very clear that's what the Mechaber means. And I don't see anybody else who learns the Mechaber differently. The Bach on the Torah is not so mashma that way. But that's the way the Pri Chodesh learns. And again, nobody else argues on it. Why does the Pri Chodesh learn that way? It's just strange. Why are we learning that way? We'll get to that answer. You know what? Maybe we'll get to that answer now. Let's take a look at the Torah. Very interesting Torah. The Torah says like this. Umipnei sha'aser lehistamish la'ira. Since there's an iser to use the light of the menorah, moisifin ner acher, we add on another ner, she'im yishtamish la'ira, so that if we do come to use the light of the menorah, she'yehei hashimush la'ar oisayaner, the benefit of the light that we get will be from that additional ner, which is not a ner shel mitzvah. Okay, beautiful. That Torah is very in line with what we've learned from the Mechaber. We have this iser, you're not allowed to be mishtamish la'ira, so we light an extra ner in case you come to be mishtamish by the or of the menorah. We'll say that you're not being mishtamish from the or of the menorah, you're being mishtamish from the or of this additional ner, which is not a ner shel mitzvah, it's a ner shel chulin. Beautiful. Continues the Torah. She'ela la'achi harab Yechiel. The Torah says, I asked a shaila of my brother, Reb Yechiel. Neris Chanukah shemadlikin echad yoiser bistam l'shamash. Okay, it's the 6th night of Chanukah. And I just learned halacha that on the 6th night of Chanukah, I have to light 7 neris. Because I need 6 neris of the ner shel mitzvah, and I need a ner noisef. I need an additional one. Kedei lehishtam sh'la'ira. So on the 6th night of Chanukah, I have to light 7 neris. Okay, so I was a good boy. I was a tatala, and I lit 7 neris. Neris Chanukah shemadlikin echad yoiser. I lit 1 extra ner bistam, but I did it bistam without any kavana. L'shamish, I understood that one of the neris that I'm lighting is intended to be a ner shel chulin, not a ner shel mitzvah. But v'loy piresh ezemehem. But I had no das which one it should be. So in other words, it's the 6th night of Chanukah. I went ahead and I prepared 7 neris. And I did not designate one of them specifically to be this, what we call the Shamash, to be the one that's a ner shel chulin that I'm allowed to be mishtamish la'ira. I just knew that on the 6th night of Chanukah I need 7 neris. So I prepared 7 neris in a row. And then I made 2 brachas and I lit 7 neris. Now I want to be mishtamish to the or of one of them. So, but now I don't know. Well, which one is the Shamash? Is the first one the Shamash? Is the last one the Shamash? Maybe the middle one is the Shamash? I don't know which one is the Shamash. So the Torah asked Rabbi Yechiel Shaila. He said, I went ahead and I lit 7 neris min hastam. I did it stam. Im yachal acher kach livror, can I now pick one of them? Eze sheyirtza, I will now designate one of them, liyoy shamash, to be the shamash. Afilu harishain, maybe even I could pick the first one. Oy min hamtzoyos, or maybe I could pick one of the middle ones. Oy dafka ha'achroin, or does it have to be the last one? V'hachi mistabra, and the Torah itself said it's most mistaber that it should be the last one. But the Torah had this shaila. So again, it's very important that this shaila be put in perspective. What the Torah is saying is like this. We understand that we have to light a ner noisef. But my shaila is, when you tell me that I have to light a ner noisef, what that means is that on the 6th night of Chanukah, I have to light 7 neris. So I prepared 7 neris and I lit 7 neris. But I didn't have in mind to designate one of them as the ner shel chulin. So the Torah asked his brother, can I now pick whichever one I want? Can I now designate, the first one is the ner shel chulin? Could I designate the last one as the ner shel chulin? Can I designate one of the middle ones as the ner shel chulin? Or is it automatically the last one? And the Torah itself said, V'haki mistabra. It's mistabra that it should be the last one. That was the Torah shaila. Says the Torah, tshuva. What was the answer? Neres Chanukah, when you light the Neres Chanukah, ain't lahafsik behen. You're not allowed to be mafsik. Not between the bracha and the lighting, and not between any of the other Neres. You shouldn't be mafsik. Even though you're allowed to say a Neres Halala once you lit the first one. But we don't want you to be mafsik doing anything else. Hilkach, therefore, ha'achroin yeh shaloi l'shem ner Chanukah, the last one should be designated as the one that is the Ner Shechulin. That should be the one that's not a Ner Chanukah. Shem yishtamish la'oran, so that now if you come inadvertently to use the light of the menorah, yishtamish la'oroi se'aner, will say that you're using the light of that Ner. Okay, so if I stop here, Rabbi Chiel, the brother of the Torah, answered the Shaila. The Shaila was, I lit min astam, can I pick whichever one I want? Answers Rabbi Chiel, no. You must light the last one as the Ner Shel Chulin, because the first ones that you light have to be the Ner Shel Mitzvah, because you can't be mafsik. So the first ones are the Ner Shel Mitzvah, the last one is the Ner Shel Chulin, the last one is what we call a Shamash. And what the Torah, when he asked the Shaila, the Torah called the Ner Shel Chulin a Shamash. He said, Ner Chanukah shevadlikin echad yoser b'stam l'shamish. Right? Those were the words of the Torah. Rabbi Chiel, when he gave the tshuva, there's one more phrase left to the tshuva. Very enigmatic, interesting phrase. Ve'ein shem shamish alav. This last ner that you're lighting, that's not what's called the shamash. Ve'ein shem shamish alav. That last ner that you're lighting as the Ner Shel Chulin, that's not called a shamash. Ki hashamish, what's the shamish? Hu hamadlik by haneres. The shamish is the ner that you use to light the other neres. That's the shamish. This ner. So Rabbi Chiel said to his brother, the Torah, he said, you asked me a shaila. You said you understand that you have to light an extra ner. So on the sixth night of Chanukah, you're going to light 7 neres. Your shaila was, can I pick whichever one I want to be the shamish? Or does the Acharon have to be the Shamash? And for the Torah, the last one has to be the Ner Shel Chulin. The last one has to be the Ner that's not the Ner Shel Mitzvah. It can't be any of the first 6 or 7 or 5, whatever it is. Why? Because you can't be mafsik when you're lighting the Ner Shel Mitzvah. The last one's got to be the Ner Shel Chulin. But you Torah, you called it a Shamash. It's not a Shamash. The Shamash is the Ner that you use to light the other Neres. This is not called a Shamash. That's what Rabbi Chiel said. Comes along the Darkei Moshe, the Ramah, and the Ramah says, very strange, Rabbi Chiel. Yesh makshim, there are those who ask a kasha, my nafkamina de ein shem shamash alav. What was Rabbi Chiel's point in pointing out to his brother the Torah? You called it the shamash, the extra ner. It's not a shamash. You light an extra ner. It's the 6th night of Chanukah. You light 7 neres. So yeah, the last one is a Ner Shel Chulin. It's not a Ner Shel Mitzvah, and that's the one that if you're mishtamish la'ora, we're going to be saying that you were mishtamish to the or of that ner. But why do you call it a shamash? That's not the shamash. The shamash is the one that you use to light the Ner Shel Mitzvah. Why are you calling that guy a shamash? It's not a shamash. Frek the Torah. What's the point? Who cares if you call it a shamash or you don't call it a shamash? Why is this an issue? Why is Rabbi Chiel making an issue out of this? Answers the Torah. V'nireh. And it seems to me, this Torah drove me crazy, this Darkei Moshe drove me crazy this morning. I was trying to figure out this Darkei Moshe. Finally figured out this Darkei Moshe. V'nireh, says the Ramah, v'nireh, it seems to me, the Rotza Loimar, what Rabbi Chiel wanted to say is, he was protesting to the Torah. He didn't like the Torah's entire arrangement. He was not happy with the psak of the Torah at all. V'nireh li derotza loimar. What Rabbi Chiel wanted to say to the Torah was, the Asr Lasos Cain. Torah, my brother, you're not allowed to do what you are describing. What you're describing is the 6th night of Chanukah, and you're going to light 7 neres. And why are you lighting 7 neres? Because you're making the last one a Ner Shel Chulin. Said Rabbi Chiel, no way. You're not allowed to do this. The Asr Lasos Cain. The Harei Moisef ala Neres shemechuyev lahadlik. It's the sixth night of Chanukah. You gotta light 6 neiros. You're lighting 7. You can't light 7 neiros on the sixth night of Chanukah. You're completely subverting the mitzvah of Mahadrim and Mahadrin. The mitzvah of Mahadrim and Mahadrin is that on the sixth night of Chanukah you light 6 neiros. You're lighting 7. So you lost the whole hecker to the 6th day of Chanukah. So says Rabbi Yechiel, Tor, Asar Lasris Kain. Not allowed to do what you're describing. Ulazeh Amar. And because of this protest of Rabbi Yechiel's, because of this protest, Rabbi Yechiel went weiter and he said, Im Toimar. Now, my brother, the Torah, if you'll ask me, Shamash, what do you mean that on the 6th night of Chanukah you're not allowed to light 7 neiros? What do you mean? There's a minig of the Shamash. We take the Shamash, we light the 6 neiros, and the Ramah is going to say, we didn't learn that Ramah yet, the Ramah is going to say that our minig is, we take the Shamash that we used to light the 6 neiros, and we put it next to the menorah. So, says Rabbi Yechiel to the Torah, I just told you that on the 6th night of Chanukah, you're not allowed to light 7 neiros. Because if you light 7 neiros on the 6th night of Chanukah, you're subverting the minig of Mahadrim and Mahadrin, because there's no longer a hecker that it's the 6th day of Chanukah. Now you're going to come, Tor, and you're going to ask me, but my brother, what do you mean? We let people do it by the Shamash. We let them take the Shamash and put the Shamash next to the menorah. So, what do you mean? In Tamar, if you'll ask me, Shamash and Noy go beheter, the Shamash that we are matir, we do allow them to put it next to the menorah. Hey Chidami, according to you, Rabbi Yechiel, that you say that on the 6th night of Chanukah you can't light 7 neiros, how come it's okay for the Shamash? L'chein Piresh, to answer that question, Rabbi Yechiel said, She'ein zeh kari Shamash. Tor, what you're doing is not a Shamash. Tor, what you're describing is, on the 6th night of Chanukah, you come to your menorah has not 6 lichtalach, it has 7. You come to your menorah with a candle, aka a shamash, and what do? You light 7 neiros. Now that 7th nair that you lit, it's not a shamash. Why are you calling it a shamash? It's equal to the other 6 that you lit. You lit 6 and then you lit a 7th. So by you, the method that you, the Torah, are prescribing, the extra nair that's being lit is not a shamash. That's what Rabbi Yechiel meant when he wrote, Ve'ein shein shamash alav. In your description, the 7th nair, the last nair that you're lighting, that's not a shamash. The shamash is ki ha-shamash hu amadlik by aneros. The shamash is the candle that you're holding to light the 6. Ki hu madlik by aneros. And that is not a problem. Rabbi Yechiel said, my way, where what it means to light a ner noisef is the shamash. How do you light Chanukah neiros? On the 6th night of Chanukah, you approach your menorah. How many lichtolach does your menorah have? 6. Not 7. 6. You take the shamash, you light all 6. Everybody understands. It's the 6th night of Chanukah. Now you're holding the shamash. You take the shamash, you stick it down next to the menorah. But everybody understands that that candle that you stuck next to the menorah is not one of the Chanukah lichtalach. They saw you just lit 6 Chanukah lichtalach. You're holding a candle in your hand? Well, how else are you supposed to light the lichtalach? Obviously, you have to hold the candle in your hand. Now, instead of putting it out, you stuck it next to the menorah. But everybody understands that it's the 6th night of Chanukah. But you, Tur, that's not the method that you described. The method that you described is that on the 7th night of Chanukah, your menorah has 7 lichtalach. And you're holding a shamash, and you light 7 lichtalach. Says Rabbi Yechiel, you can't do that. You're subverting Mahadrim and Mahadrin. And don't come to me. You wrote in your shiur to me, you called the 7th licht a shamash. It's not a shamash. It's completely equivalent to the other 6 lichtalach. The shamash is the one you're holding in your hand. The shamash is not equivalent to the other lichtalach. So don't ask me about our minig. Kain nira li. Says the Darkei Moshe, That's how I understand the dialogue between the Torah and his brother Reb Yechiel. Now, with that Darkei Moshe in mind, we could learn the Ramah. So again, what is the method that the Mechaber, who was coming off of the Torah, what's the method that the Mechaber prescribed? The method of the Mechaber was, on the 6th night of Chanukah, you're going to light 7 neiros. You're not going to light 6, you're going to light 7. Because you need a ner noisaf. You need an additional ner. So you're going to light 7 neiros. Says the Ramah now, I don't like your method, Mechaber. Says the Ramah, second line down near the end of the line, Hagah. Uve Medinais Elu, in our Medinais, ein noyagim lohisif. We're not noyig to light another light. So that if it's the 6th night of Chanukah, we light 7. We're not noyig that way, says the Ramah. Rak, what do we do to take away of the problem that Asr Lihishtamish La'ira? Maniach Etzlan HaShamash Shabai Madlik Haneres. We use the Shamash. So if it's the 6th night of Chanukah, we light 6 neiros. Not 7. We light 6. And then we take the Shamash and we stick it down next door. So we take care of the problem of Asr Lihishtamish La'ira. V'hu adif tvei. And says the Ramah, this is a much better minig. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois cotton. Let's go to Yud Ches. I know I skipped Yud Zayin. Let's go to Yud Ches. The Ramah said, Hashamish Shaboy. We take the Shamash that we use to light. So first, the Mishnah Berurah makes a point. What do you do if you have 8 people in your house lighting menorahs? Do you need 8 Shamashim? Or maybe you just need 1 Shamash. It'll cover all the menorahs. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no, you need 8 Shamashim. Even if a lot of people light a menorah, since each person has to put his menorah in a distinct place, like we said earlier in Tafrei Shayin Aleph, you can't just have a huge mumble jumble of neiros, because then nobody can tell which night of Chanukah it is. So the menorahs have to be distinct. Our menorahs are distinct because each one is an individual menorah. So even if they're next to each other, they're still distinct. But if you didn't actually have a menorah, you're just lighting loose neiros, you can't have everybody lighting all the neiros together. It looks like it's the 150th day of Chanukah. So everybody has to put their neiros in a makom b'yuchad. So therefore, shamish echad. So each grouping of neiros has to have its own shamish. Afilu yesh ner al shulchan, even if there's a ner somewhere else for ambient light. The Ramah says, my method of using the shamish is better. Why? Because like the Ramah said in the Darkei Moshe, my way, it's very clear that it's the 6th night of Chanukah. I lit 6 licht for Dirshu Mitzvah, and the ner noisef is the shamish that I stick down. Now let's go back to Mishnah Berurah Ois Yud Zayin. Ois Yud Zayin was going on the Ramah. The Ramah said, Rak maniach etzlad, we put the shamish down near the menorah. The toiv, and the Mishnah Berurah points out, the toiv shalavad. Yes, we're solving the problem of asur lehistamish la'ora because we're putting the shamish down. But, says the Chavetz Chaim, the toiv, it would be proper and good, shalevad zeh, that besides the shamish, yaniach ner al shulchan, there still should be a ner for ambient light. In other words, you still should have a light on in the room. Even though you have a shamish, don't turn off all the lights in the room. And now we're going to say that you're only being mishtamish by the aura of the shamish. Turn on an ambient light also, so that it's more clear, there's a greater hecker, that the neiros are neiros shel mitzvah, and you're not using them for light. Okay, so we read inside the Mechaber, the Hagah, the Ramah, we saw the Torah, we saw the Darkei Moshe. There's one open loop. So let me just tie everything together over here and close the one open loop. Again, it seems to me that the Mechaber is coming off of the Torah. We have the problem that there's an Isser Lehishtamish La'ora. Said the Torah, because there's an Isser L'Hishtamish La'ira, we have to have an additional Ner, so that if inadvertently we come to be mishtamish by the or that's being generated from the menorah, we'll say that we're using the light that was generated from the ner shel chulin, from the extra ner, from the ner noisaf. The method described by the Torah and seemingly adopted by the Mechaber is that if it's the 6th night of Chanukah, you're not going to light 6 neros, you're going to light 7 neros. The 7th ner is going to be positioned a little bit away from the other neros, so that there should be epis heker, that it's not one of the neros shel mitzvah, that this one is a ner shel chulin. The Mechaber also said, coming again off of the Torah, that it should be the ner achron. It should be the last one that you light. Why? Because we don't want you to be mafsik between the bracha and the lighting, or between the lighting of all of the neros shel mitzvah. But again, if it's the 6th night, you're going to prepare 7 neros, and you're going to make a bracha, and you're going to light 7 neros. Okay, there's going to be epis heker, that the 7th ner that you're lighting is not equal to the other 6. The 6 on a ner shel mitzvah, the 7th is not. It's a little bit away. But you're going to light 7 neros. Comes along the Ramah, and the Ramah is based on his own words on the Torah and the Darkei Moshe, and he bases it on a diuk that he makes in the Torah in the words of Rabbi Yechiel. And he says, no, we don't like the method that's described by the Mechaber and that's described by the Torah. Don't say that if it's the 6th night of Chanukah, you're going to light 7 neros. No, if it's the 6th night of Chanukah, you're going to light 6 neros. And then you're going to take the extra ner, then you're going to take the Shamash that you used to light the 6, and you'll stick it down, and that'll be your ner noisaf. Why does the Ramah say that way? Because the Ramah says, how could you tell me that if it's the 6th night of Chanukah, you're going to go light 7 neros? That subverts the minig of Mahadrin min Mahadrin. The whole minig of Mahadrin min Mahadrin is that each night you light that number of neros. To tell me that on the 6th night you should light 7 subverts Mahadrin min Mahadrin. Therefore, says the Ramah, on the 6th night of Chanukah you light 6. And now take the ner that you used to light the other neros and stick it down. That's what the Ramah says. Now, how is this all negeya to us? So the truth is, I think it's very negeya to us. A lot of people have menorahs, they light oil menorahs, and they have the following problem. The Shamash is set up to use oil, and you can't use an oil licht as a Shamash. So if you have a menorah and you use those crystals or those glass ner mitzvah cups, and you put in either your floating wicks or your standing wicks or whatever it is that you use, and you prepare your Shamash also as an oil licht, you're not going to use it as a Shamash. So what do people do? If it's the 6th night of Chanukah, they set up 7 neros. They set up 6 on the main body of the menorah, and then they have a 7th in the cup that's designated for the Shamash. Then they take a candle, they make the brachas, and they light 7 neros. First, hopefully what they do is, they make the bracha, first they light the 6th, and then they light the Shamash, which is the method that is described really by the Torah and the Mechaber, not the method described by the Ramah. The method described by the Ramah is on the 6th night of Chanukah, you light 6, and then you take the Shamash and you put it down next to the menorah. So it would seem to me very clear that based on this Ramah, you should use a candle as a Shamash, you should make the bracha, you should light the Chanukah lichtalach, and then you should put the Shamash with a candle onto the menorah, which is what I do. Now, if you do not do that, so what comes out from here is, for sure, you should light the Shamash last. You shouldn't light the Shamash first, it would seem. Now, definitely you cannot light the Shamash after you make the bracha, before you light the other 6 neros if it's the 6th night of Chanukah. Certainly you should make the bracha, first light the 6 neros shel mitzvah, and only then light the Shamash. That's for sure. Question, could you make the Shamash an oil licht and light it first? before you ever make the bracha. So again, it's the 6th night of Chanukah. You have 7 lichtalach set up on your menorah. You have 6 on the main body of the menorah, and you have another oil licht set up where the Shamash goes. So how about if you come to the menorah, just light the Shamash before you make a bracha. And now after you light the Shamash, go make a bracha and light the 6 on the main body of the menorah. Okay. My Rebbe, Reb Reuven, told me that you could do that. And in a way, he said, Adarabah, that would be even better, because now you lit the Shamash first, and now there's absolutely no problem of being mishtamish la'ira, because the Shamash was lit before you ever lit any of the lichtalach. The other way, if first you make the bracha and you light the 6 Ner Shel Mitzvah, so then the Ner Shel Mitzvah were burning before the Shamash was ever burning, maybe there's more chance of a problem of being mishtamish la'ira. If you light the Shamash first, so the Shamash was already burning before any of the Ner Shel Mitzvah were burning. That's what Reb Reuven told me. Now, I'm a little puzzled because nobody gives that eitzah. Why not give that eitzah? Why didn't the Torah or the Mechaber give the eitzah, right? The Torah, Rabbi Yechiel and the Torah went out of his way to say that the Ner Shel Chulin should be lit last. Why not say, light it first before you ever make the bracha? And I could give one reason why it's problematic to light it first, and that is we learned in Taf Reish Nun Aleph, when we were learning the Hilchas Lulav, we learned Taf Reish Nun Aleph. What do you do when you're coming to make the bracha on the lulav? We said, Yevarech al Natilas Lulav, V'shechiyanu, the first day. You make the brachas first, Kaidim Sheyita LaEsrig, before you take the Esrig, Kidei Sheyavarech Over Lasiyasai. We said, make the bracha, and then pick up the lulav and Esrig. Or, says the Mechaber, the meaning that we have, Yapay Esrig Ad Sheyavarech. Pick up the Esrig, up the lulav and Esrig, holding the Esrig upside down, make the bracha, and then turn the Esrig the right side up. Why? Because we want you to make the bracha before you become the mitzvah. Once you pick up the lulav and Esrig, you already become the mitzvah. Now you're going to go make a bracha? Now, b'di'eved, if you did pick up the lulav and Esrig, and you picked up the Esrig right side up before you made the bracha, so the Mishnah Berurah says over here you could still make a bracha. Why could you still make a bracha? Because you didn't make the nanuim yet, and the nanuim are part of the mitzvah. So you could make the bracha even though you already picked up the lulav and Esrig. But lechatchila, we don't want you to hold the lulav and Esrig the right way before you make the bracha. Now, it could be that by Neres Chanukah, what are you going to do? You're going to light the Shamash first, and then you're going to make a bracha and light the rest of the Neres? Let's remember that the Iker mitzvah of Ner Chanukah is Ner Ishu Beisai. You could be Yotze your whole Chiyuv of Neres Chanukah by lighting one Ner. So now it's time to light Neres Chanukah. You go to your Shamash and you light it. The truth is that you already did enough to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah by lighting that one licht. Now you're going to go make a bracha and light another 6? Now, okay, you didn't have das when you lit the Shamash to be Yotze the mitzvah. You knew that you were lighting it as a Shamash. So, b'di'eved, is it a problem? No, it's not. But that could be why nobody wanted to say that eitzah. But again, Reb Reuven said that that's okay. I also did see a picture. I don't want to be medayik too much from the picture because it was B'Saif Yamav of Rav Moshe, and I don't know who set up his menorah. Could be somebody already set up the menorah. But I do have a picture of Rav Moshe lighting his Chanukah licht, and it looks from the picture like it's either the 6th or the 7th night of Chanukah, and he appears to be lighting the first ner, and he's lighting the ner with a little Chanukah candle, and the Shamash is already lit. But I don't know who lit the Shamash. Maybe somebody else lit the Shamash. I don't know if he lit the Shamash. Could be whoever prepared the menorah lit the Shamash and then gave the Yeshiva Zatzal the little candle to go light. So I don't know what you could be medayik from that picture, but that gives you some insight into what's going on over here with the ner that seems to be the most inconsequential ner of the menorah, the Shamash, and yet you see that we had a 54-minute shiur based on the question of the Shamash. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The schus of limud HaTorah should be begun against Klal Yisrael. The Rabban Shem should said, Yeshua's refuas and parnas and shidduchim to all those in need, and we should be zeichet to the bias gal tzedek, the Meherav Yameinu Amen. Be well.